Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to explore the incredibly intricate, spiritually charged, and just, highly complicated relationship between two very specific characters.
Yeah, Jake and Maggie.
Exactly. They are the central figures in Rena Lynn's Prepare for the End series, which is published by Total Freedom Publishing.
Right, and to really dig into this, we are pulling from a pretty fascinating stack of sources today.
Oh, undoubtedly.
We're looking at excerpts from several of Rena Lynn's novels, specifically A Safe Haven, God's Men, and The Hourglass Flips. Plus, we have this really comprehensive literary analysis that breaks down the entire series.
So with that framework in place, I want you to think about this for a second. Have you ever met someone who just completely, undeniably gets you?
Right, like you're totally on the same wavelength.
Exactly. You speak the exact same secret language. You constantly finish each other's sentences, and you just know deep down in your bones that this person is a perfect match.
But then reality hits.
Yeah, but instead of letting them in, your own personal baggage gets in the way. Your deep-seated fears, your past traumas, those hidden wounds you just don't talk about. They completely paralyze you.
You basically force yourself to keep them at arm's length.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's such a universally human experience.
It really is, and honestly, it's often a tragic one. I mean, we spend years building these elaborate emotional walls to protect ourselves from getting hurt again.
Right.
Only to realize down the line that we've successfully locked out the exact person we actually want inside.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Jake and Maggie take this totally relatable human struggle and they elevate it to an apocalyptic scale.
Literally apocalyptic.
Yeah, they are a perfectly matched pair, and the author explicitly tasks them with the divine mission for the end times. But despite the literal world collapsing around them, they remain completely paralyzed by their own internal, hidden wounds.
Right. The external backdrop is this massive, terrifying societal meltdown. But the most intense war is happening entirely inside their own heads. And to truly understand the gravity of that emotional standoff, we first have to establish the sheer magnitude of their baseline connection. Rena Lynn builds their relationship from the intellect up.
Yeah, they're both formidable.
Highly trained Bible scholars.
Yeah, the sources describe Jake as a college history professor, affectionately known by his students as Dr. J.
Which is a great nickname, by the way.
It is. But he isn't just teaching standard textbook history. He is secretly teaching New Testament apologetics right inside his secular classroom.
Right, and for those unfamiliar with the term, apologetics isn't about apologizing. It comes from a Greek word meaning to give a defense.
Right.
So New Testament apologetics is the practice of defending the historical reliability and theological claims of the Bible. You use logic, historical evidence, and legal reasoning.
It's intense stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
Jake is carefully walking this professional tightrope, framing these ancient texts purely as historical documents. That way he can deliver this truth to his students without, losing his job.
He's incredibly strategic about it. And then you have Maggie. On paper, her day job is as a life insurance agent.
Right, a totally normal job.
Exactly. But spiritually and intellectually, she matches this brilliant history professor step for step. They co-teach a Bible study group, and the dynamic they share is just described as absolutely electric.
Oh, completely. They share this biting, deeply sarcastic wit.
Yeah. The author provides this great detail about how they often leave the other people in their study group with these completely glazed over looks.
I love that detail.
It's so good. It's like they are the only two native speakers of a very rare language in a crowded room.
Yeah.
If you aren't fluent, you're just left blinking at them while they communicate at light speed.
Exactly. They operate on this much higher, faster frequency than anyone else around them.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is that in Rena Lynn's literary world, this intellectual parody is far more than just a cute character quirk. The literary analysis we're using refers to Lynn's genre as kinetic Christian realism.
Meaning the spiritual elements are not just metaphors.
Far from it. In kinetic Christian realism, spiritual warfare is a physical, kinetic reality.
Wow.
Yeah, the world Lynn portrays is rapidly melting down. It's literally fractured between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of darkness. There are ancient covens and active demonic realms.
This is wild.
So when Jake and Maggie are studying eschatology, that's the theology of the end of the world, they aren't having an academic debate over coffee. They are studying literal battlefield tactics.
Right.
Their shared intellect and their ability to parse these ancient texts to understand what is coming is the specific skill set that makes them a viable leadership team for all the survivalists gathering around them.
But having a big brain and, like, elite-level banter only gets you so far, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, knowing ancient history is great for a classroom, but when society is actually collapsing and you are facing down kinetic spiritual warfare, you would need something much more foundational holding you together.
The author seems to agree, because she anchors their partnership in something that goes way beyond mutual attraction or shared intelligence. The foundation of their relationship is presented as undeniably supernatural.
So how does Ring-a-Lin establish that? Because, in a lot of apocalyptic fiction, the romance just happens by proximity.
Mhm.
Like, oh, hey, they're the last two attractive people left in the bunker.
Right, exactly. But Lynn does something highly cinematic to bypass that trope.
Okay, tell me.
In the first book, A Safe Haven, she stages this moment where the physical world dramatically reacts to a spiritual reality.
Ooh, I love this part.
It's so good. Jake and Maggie are together, grappling with the sheer terror of the societal collapse that is beginning to unfold. Jake is basically pledging his allegiance to Maggie and this monumental task she's been entrusted with.
Right.
He stands up, and out of nowhere, his physical Bible inexplicably slides off the table and crashes to the floor.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because it doesn't just fall, it lands wide open to a very specific verse.
Ecclesiastes 4.1 Wealth.
Yes. Jake picks it up and reads it aloud. And it says, "And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not easily broken." And the text tells us that in that exact second, deep in his spirit, Jake hears God say one single word. Yes.
Just chills. And Maggie's reaction in the text is equally immediate and profound.
Yeah, she doesn't even blink.
Exactly. Without a second of hesitation, she recites this divine prophecy detailing how God has layered what she calls spiritual muscle memory into them.
Spiritual muscle memory. That is such a cool phrase.
It really is. She insists that their survival and the survival of those they will lead depends entirely on trusting this training and never going it alone.
The concept of the threefold cord is such a heavy literary device here. I mean, the three strands of that cord represent Jake, Maggie, and God.
Right.
But honestly, as a reader, you have to think about the sheer unadulterated psychological pressure of a moment like that.
Oh, it's immense.
Right. Like, if you get a literal, undeniable sign that you are prophetically bound to a specific person to lead people through the apocalypse, how do you even navigate a normal human relationship after that? The stakes are just astronomical.
They really are. And it fundamentally shifts the genre of their relationship.
How so?
Well, the author uses this divine mandate to elevate their dynamic from a standard romance into a high-stakes theological mission.
I see.
It means their success or failure as a unit is no longer just about their personal happiness or, whether they go on a nice date. It has global spiritual consequences.
They're essentially drafted into a war.
Mm-hmm.
So you have these two brilliant minds, perfectly matched. You have this literal mandate binding them together with a threefold cord.
Yeah.
The stage is perfectly set for them to become this unstoppable apocalyptic power couple. So what does this all mean for their day-to-day interactions? You'd think they would be an unbreakable team.
You would definitely assume that. But Ring-a-Lin introduces a massive complication.
Of course she does.
Because they are operating under this immense world-ending pressure, they retreat. Instead of conquering the darkness together, they are stuck in a profoundly agonizing emotional standoff.
Oh, man. They are like two master tacticians who have fortified the perimeter of their base so incredibly well against the enemy that they've accidentally trapped themselves in entirely separate bunkers.
That is exactly what it is.
They are completely paralyzed.
Yeah.
And it all stems from this fortress of hidden wounds they've built around themselves.
Yeah, and the author is very deliberate in showing how deeply trauma can rewire a human brain, even a really brilliant one.
So true.
Let's examine Maggie's bunker first. She survived a brutal marriage to a man diagnosed with comorbid personality disorders.
Comorbid meaning he had multiple overlapping psychological disorders, which makes his behavior incredibly chaotic.
Highly chaotic, completely unpredictable, and deeply abusive.
Josh,
He ultimately abandoned her and managed to cut her off from her own children.
that is just awful.
It gets worse. On top of that, she suffered the devastating traumatic loss of a child.
Oh, wow. So it's just layer upon layer of trauma.
Exactly. And as a result of this compounded trauma, her core identity was battered. She carries this crippling, deeply ingrained fear of rejection.
Right.
Her encyclopedic knowledge of the Bible and her sharp wit, they serve as a highly effective shield to keep people from seeing that terrified, rejected woman underneath.
Okay, and then we look at Jake's bunker.
Yeah.
Currently, the Dr. J we see is a highly controlled, meticulous neat freak.
Very particular.
Yeah, he is essentially a human spreadsheet. He needs lists, he needs order, and he cannot function if his environment is emotionally or physically jumbled.
Right.
But the sources reveal he wasn't always this rigid. He actually used to be known as Jake the Rake.
Jake the Rake. Yeah, the transition from that guy to a man obsessed with control is rooted in his own hidden trauma.
What happened?
He endured a mysterious, catastrophic one-year marriage out on the East Coast. Now, while the early books withhold the specific details, the impact is very clear. The experience entirely shattered his identity.
So the spreadsheets and the neat freak stuff.
Our survival mechanisms, exactly. He strictly keeps Maggie in the buddy zone, refusing to advance their romantic relationship because his brain associates vulnerability with absolute destruction.
Wow. He thinks he's playing it safe, protecting them both so they can focus on their apocalyptic mission.
But it doesn't work.
No. Relying on avoidance as a safety measure completely backfires. Especially when a massive misunderstanding occurs in the narrative.
Oh, this part is so frustrating to read.
It really is. So Jake goes out of town with his friend Rachel on a tactical run to get ammunition. And while he's gone, Maggie casually asks a mutual friend, Sharon, if Jake is seeing anyone.
Right, and Sharon just assumes Maggie is fishing for validation.
Because everyone else already knows they're in love.
Exactly. Everyone in their community already views Jake and Maggie as an inevitable couple. So Sharon playfully teases her and says, oh, yes, of course he is.
It is meant as a totally harmless joke.
But Maggie doesn't see it that way.
Not at all. Because of Maggie's trauma, she processes it as a literal threat. If you, listening right now, have ever been in a deeply insecure place and completely misinterpreted a vague text message from someone you care about.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. Spinning it into a worst-case scenario. Then you understand exactly the mechanics of what Maggie does next. Her old wounds are instantly triggered.
She spirals right back into that familiar fear of rejection. And notice what she does. She retreats to her intellect.
Her shield.
Exactly. She opens her Bible, desperately looking for comfort, and flips to Proverbs where it says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. Then she flips to Psalms, God sets the solitary in families.
But because her lens is completely distorted by her past trauma, she uses her own biblical expertise against herself.
Yes.
She actually interprets those verses as a sign that God is actively blessing Jake's imaginary Sharon.
It is the tragedy of perception. She feels entirely discarded.
Yeah.
In her mind, she is no longer part of the threefold cord. She's just a third wheel, abandoned by Jake, and seemingly abandoned by God's mandate.
This raises an important question. How can two people who are equipped to decipher ancient prophecies and literally survive the collapse of civilization fail so spectacularly at basic human communication?
That paradox right there is the central tension of the Prepare for the End series.
It's wild.
Their shared trauma acts as an impenetrable shield. It blocks out the enemy, sure, but it also blocks out each other.
Yeah.
Fear is dictating their reality, not faith. They possess all the theological knowledge in the world, but emotionally they are caught in this cycle of defensive warfare.
Because they are so deeply entrenched in this intellectual defense mechanism, they just can't logic their way out of the standoff.
No, they can't.
It requires something that bypasses their intellect entirely to break the stalemate, and the author uses a severe, violent physical trauma to force the internal emotional crisis into the light.
Right. The narrative takes a really sharp turn here. From an internal psychological battle to a visceral physical crisis.
What happens?
Maggie is severely assaulted, and the trauma of the attack is so profound that it leaves her with profound amnesia.
Oh, man.
She forgets everything. She forgets her traumatic past, she forgets the apocalyptic reality around them, and most crucially, she completely forgets her relationship with Jake.
Wow. The imagery the author uses here is just striking. We see Jake out in the cold, crying, physically hyperventilating.
He completely loses it.
Yeah. It is the first time in the series we see Dr. J, this man of absolute control and spreadsheets, completely lose his grip. His intellectual bunker has been blown wide open.
He realizes, in the starkest terms possible, that his strategy of keeping her at arm's length almost resulted in losing her forever.
Exactly. He knows he has to confess his secrets about his first marriage. He knows he finally has to confess his love.
But even in the midst of this breakdown, his deeply ingrained need for control attempts to reassert itself.
Right.
It disguises itself as a rigid moral code.
Yes. He suddenly decides it would be unfair to confess his love to a woman who doesn't even know her own identity.
Right.
He actually tells her, if you say or decide something when you don't know who we are, you'll have to deal with that when you do. I'm not doing that to you.
And on the surface, that sounds incredibly noble.
It does.
It reads like a man fiercely prioritizing consent and her mental autonomy during a really vulnerable time.
Okay, I have to push back on Jake's logic here, though.
Go for it.
Is this actually nobility? Or is this just Jake the neat freak finding another perfectly logical, highly principled excuse to delay putting his own heart on the line?
That is a very sharp psychological read of his character.
Right. It feels like the ultimate evolved defense mechanism, like, oh, I can't possibly tell you I love you because you have amnesia.
Yeah.
It's incredibly convenient for a guy who is terrified of rejection.
Oh, absolutely. And it is precisely why the author introduces a foil in this moment.
Matt.
Yes. Their close friend Matt has to step in as the necessary voice of reason. Matt represents the broader community of believers in the series, who are often referred to as God's men.
Okay.
He pulls Jake aside and essentially strips away that intellectual excuse.
It's for Matt.
He tells Jake to stop hiding behind his principles. He reminds him that Maggie has loved him for years, that she was waiting for him, and that Jake simply needs the patience to let her heal. And the courage to actually be present when she does.
Matt is the reality check Jake so desperately needs.
Completely.
Because Jake's instinct is to control the timeline, to fix it immediately or just retreat. But Matt reminds him that the threefold cord involves a community called to protect each other.
Right.
Jake isn't an island, and he cannot spreadsheet his way through Maggie's brain injury.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Rena Lynn is doing something very sophisticated from a literary standpoint here. She is utilizing Maggie's physical trauma and her literal amnesia as a direct mechanical mirror for their emotional brokenness.
Break down how that mirror works in the narrative.
Well, think about the biological function of amnesia. It is a psychological and physical defense mechanism where the brain completely blocks out memories and pain. It simply cannot handle processing.
Right.
For years prior to this assault, Jake and Maggie have been operating with a severe form of emotional amnesia. They deliberately blocked out their past traumas, refusing to speak of them, refusing to process the pain, solely so they could function day to day.
That makes total sense. The trauma was locked away. Jake the rake was buried so Dr. Jake could survive.
Exactly.
And the abused, terrified wife was buried so the fierce, sarcastic Bible scholar could survive.
Yes. Therefore, Maggie's literal painstaking journey in that hospital room to reclaim her missing memories completely parallels Jake's required internal journey.
His journey to reclaim his suppressed capacity for emotional intimacy.
Exactly. He can no longer hide behind his rapid-fire intellect or his meticulous rules.
He's stuck.
He's forced to sit in the messy, slow, agonizing reality of a hospital room with a woman who looks at him like a stranger. He has to patiently rebuild the trust he previously took for granted.
Yeah.
The amnesia forces them both back to square one, but crucially, it forces them to start over without the invisible intellectual walls they had spent years perfecting.
It completely strips away their primary weapon. I mean, they can't logic their way out of a traumatic brain injury. They can't quote a piece of eschatological theology to instantly fix her memory.
Right.
They're just forced to sit in the pain, be incredibly vulnerable, and wait for the healing.
And that forced patience acts as a crucible.
Yeah.
It burns away Jake's need for control and Maggie's fear of rejection. It leaves only the essential, foundational truth of their bond, the one that was established back when that Bible hit the floor.
Which brings our deep dive full circle. We set out today to explore the highly complicated relationship between Jake and Maggie in the Prepare for the End series.
And what the sources reveal is a narrative about two absolute intellectual equals.
Yeah, bound together by a literal divine mandate to survive the apocalypse, yet completely stalled by their deeply rooted, very human fears of rejection.
It is such a profound exploration of human vulnerability.
It really is.
Rena Lynn effectively uses the macro conflict of the end time, the collapse of society and kinetic spiritual warfare, to magnify the micro conflict of the human heart. The stakes of the apocalypse make their emotional avoidance impossible to sustain.
And honestly, that is exactly why this analysis matters to you, the listener. Because while you might not be fighting ancient covens or preparing for a literal fiery apocalypse, we all carry our own versions of those hidden wounds.
You really do.
We all have that emotional baggage. We all harbor deep-seated fears of rejection or memories of past traumas that cause us to build intellectual or emotional walls.
Holy.
And you have to ask yourself, how often do those walls cause you to push away the exact people, the incredible opportunities, or the true callings you are most meant to embrace?
Right.
We lock ourselves in the bunker to keep the pain out, but we end up starving in the dark.
It is the great paradox of the human condition. I mean, we deeply desire connection and purpose, but we are terrified of the vulnerability required to actually achieve and sustain it.
Yeah.
We become our own worst saboteurs.
But maybe, just maybe, that vulnerability isn't a weakness at all. Which leaves us with one final lingering thought for you to mull over today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spent this time analyzing how Jake and Maggie's shared trauma kept them emotionally paralyzed. It was their biggest obstacle, right? The thing that almost destroyed them.
Right.
But consider this perspective. If the world really is falling apart, and they are tasked with leading broken, terrified, traumatized people through an apocalypse, is it possible that their intimate, agonizing knowledge of pain and brokenness is exactly the spiritual muscle memory God knew they would need all along to be effective leaders?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. Perhaps their deepest wounds aren't the barrier to their calling. Perhaps their wounds are the very preparation for it.
Something to think about the next time you find yourself building a wall. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Prepare for the End series. We'll catch you next time.